Okay, so this one is going to be about, I guess what I'm going to call like kind of default or go-to phrases and concepts. And there's a lot of different applications for this. It's probably, honestly, it's more of like an intuitive concept that you don't really think about, but you know, it's one of those, like, you don't really think about it, but then when someone talks about it, you're like, oh yeah, I do that. Basically, for a variety of common situations, you just have kind of go-to things that you might say. Like, say, there's a gnome in the party, and this gnome has, like, reasonable AC, and whenever somebody attacks the gnome, and the attack misses, just describe like as a go-to, so you don't have to think about it. That's the main advantage of this type of thing. It reduces mental workload and decision making. So whenever something attacks this gnome and misses, you just describe how they swing a little high, something like that, or the gnome ducks down even lower to avoid an attack aimed at their head. Just simple things like that. Or what you can kind of think of as, like, from a player's perspective, like a catchphrase that your character might have. For example, my Lizard Folk Ranger, in most social interactions in, like, the city environment that we've been in for a while, he will either wave, because that's like one of the few soft skin gestures he understands, or he will give people beef jerky. He'll do one of those two things, because they're a simple go-to thing that me playing this character can just kind of do, and it shows the character's personality and how they're present in this moment. But it basically requires no thought process from me. The only thought process is, okay, my character's gonna interact. Should I think of something complicated? No. Wave. That's it. Like, that's the idea. But, like, this becomes kind of applicable in a lot of different cases. Like, a lot of DMs, I think, will kind of default to attacks against players, or just attacks in general, just kind of missing. Because it's easy to get into the mindset, because the way the mechanics are described, like, okay, 15 to hit. Oh, that misses. Okay, it misses. All it means is that it does not do damage. The attack does not connect in a meaningful way. It doesn't necessarily mean that it physically misses, especially against, like, a character that's in, like, full plate armor with a shield and has, like, a negative, like, has an 8 dex. Like, they're not dodging anything. They are using their armor to absorb attacks, but it's still a miss. You don't describe it as a block necessarily. But sometimes those things can go too far, like, especially if you're overwhelmed from a DM perspective in this particular moment, all of your descriptions might just be defaults. So, sometimes you may have to avoid them, but they're still really strong. It's a really strong type of tool to use. And, like, you might have some go-to, like, words, not necessarily phrases, but words. Like, I'm really fond of the word shred for some reason. Like, when a monster is down to, like, 1 or 2 HP, just enough to be technically alive. Like, I might say it has a little, it seems to have a little shred of vitality left, but it's clearly on its last legs. It's ready to fall over, but it's not quite done. Something like that. Yeah, just really fond of the word shred for some reason. I don't know why. What else? This one might be the shortest video I've made. Or just kind of go-to combat actions as well. Like, they don't have to be things you say or descriptions. They can be just a default action you take. And if you're like a fighter, that's a really easy one. You're just like, okay, I swing my sword. Like, not every attack has to be super thought. Not every turn has to be like super thought out. And like you're doing all this shit and you're coming up with creative stuff. Sometimes it's just fine to say, oh yeah, I cast this cantrip. I do this. I swing my sword twice. Blah blah blah. Whatever it is. But yeah, I guess this one's real short. I'm out of stuff to say about this. All right, have a short video.